Joining me now, NBC Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles, Donell Harvin, former Chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence for Washington, D.C., former U.S. Attorney Paul Charlton, Washington Post Deputy National Editor Phil Rucker, and Brendan Buck, former Communications Advisor to Speakers Ryan and Boehner. So, Phil, let's talk about this new Washington Post report from your colleague, the best-selling co-author Carol Leonnig, on the behind-the-scenes deliberations by the FBI about that Mar-a-Lago search. What more can you tell us?
Well, Andrea, this is a pretty extraordinary new reporting inside the discussions within law enforcement about how aggressively to investigate Trump over his handling of classified documents and whether to conduct that surprise raid of his Mar-a-Lago home in August. My colleagues are reporting for the first time that some officials within the FBI who would have been involved in that search were resisting doing the surprise raid and instead advocating that prosecutors and the FBI work collaboratively with Trump's legal team to arrange for a consensual search. This all speaks to how carefully different law enforcement officials were trying to handle the former president. This was an extraordinary kind of investigation, not one with any parallel, not one they're used to conducting, and it shows how carefully they were weighing all of these steps and the disputes and arguments they were having internally in the run-up to that raid.
And Paul Charlton, you've been highlighting how unique the situation is in terms of the traditional dynamic between federal prosecutors, FBI agents. Explain.
Well, Andrea, it's not unusual that prosecutors and agents would have discussions and disagreements, and sometimes heated disagreements about how it is a case should be handled. Prosecutors, though, are usually those who are urging caution, who are urging a methodical view of how it is the evidence should be gathered. And agents, on the other hand, are usually the ones who are saying we need to be bold, even aggressive, and using all of those lawful tools that are available to us, including search warrants. Here, that paradigm was turned on its head. It was the prosecutors who were indicating that a search warrant was the only reasonable means of gathering these classified documents and putting them into a secure place. And the agents who are saying, no, we don't want to do a search warrant at this point in time. We want to see if we can get a consensual search warrant. And Andrea, the greatest concern for me in that is that the article points out that some of those agents were worried that if they were involved in this investigation, their careers would be at risk. This idea of a crossfire hurricane hangover, the idea that former agents who were involved in the investigation of former President Trump somehow had their careers hindered, has carried over to today, and that's something we should all be very concerned about.
I mean, this goes, Paul, just to explicate this further, this goes to the Trump effect, really, because it was Donald Trump, and it was an unusual raid. There's no question about that, the former president of the United States. But this is part of this hangover, isn't it?
That's precisely right. And so all of this very overt discussion about the FBI and how we can't trust the FBI has now apparently gone down to the line FBI agents in this case who were concerned that the optics of a search conducted at Mar-a-Lago were going to be such that their careers would be hindered. It ought not to never be that way. There should never be a concern that when FBI agents are conducting their lawful duties, that somehow their careers are going to be at risk. We need agents who are, just as we talked about earlier, bold, who are assertive, who want to do what the law allows them to do to enforce the law, and prosecutors who can assist them in getting search warrants. When politics interferes with that decision-making process, when agents are concerned about their very careers for doing what is right, we all lose.
And Ryan Nobles, take us through the key topics, the questioning from Merrick Garland today, of course, a former appeals court judge, former attempted Obama nominee to the Supreme Court. He is very precise, very lawyerly, obviously, in his answers. What kinds of things are they asking about fentanyl, Hunter Biden?
Yeah, all of the above, Andrea, and you're right. Sometimes one might even describe the Attorney General as boring in a setting like this, which is often not what senators would like to see. And it's important to point out that Garland hasn't been before the Senate Judiciary Committee since 2021. So it has been some time since they've been able to pepper him with questions. And both Republicans and Democrats have a number of topics that they want to press Garland on. And you mentioned the situation at the border and the delivery of fentanyl over the border, how fentanyl has become a big problem here in the United States. And this is how Garland responded to questions about that particular topic.
We are focusing on fentanyl with enormous urgency. I have personally twice traveled to Mexico to try to get greater cooperation from the Mexicans on exactly the problem you're talking about. I have separately talked twice in person with the Mexican Attorney General for exactly the problem that you're talking about. We are focusing on this with enormous urgency.
And there was obviously some partisanship on display as this hearing continues. Ted Cruz, other senators pressing Garland for not doing enough to prosecute those who would put threats against the sitting Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and things along those lines. So this hearing, which is expected to continue throughout the day in two different parts, expected to touch on a range of topics because, as we've said before, it's been a while since Garland's been before this panel. Andrea?
And I think I saw that Merrick Garland was pointing out that as soon as the Dobbs abortion decision was leaked, he ordered for the first time ever the marshals to put security around the homes of the Supreme Court justices who have been, notably, concerned about the effects on their lives with all of these protests that have been continuing. Brendan, Speaker McCarthy is being criticized for giving hundreds of hours of January 6th security tapes to Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Unilaterally, the big security concerns. McCarthy says it was an exclusive. Let's play what he had to say about this today.
Tucker was interested. So we have exclusive, then I'll give it out to the entire country. There's roughly almost 42,000 hours. We're working through that. We work with the Capitol Police as well, so we'll make sure security is taken care of. And I know January 6th went through showing things they shouldn't. I know they showed exit routes, my exit route. I know they showed Mike Pence, and I thought that was wrong.
Why give it to someone who is down?
Because I think sunshine matters, so I don't care what side of the issue you are on.
So, Brendan, you worked with two previous GOP speakers of the House. How would you advise McCarthy on this? And I misspoke. It was not hundreds. It was 42 or 44,000 hours of tape, never before seen, held back by the January 6th hearings precisely because it showed secure rooms and entranceways and cameras.
Yeah, I have so many questions about this, and I think that I would be upset about what he's doing, but I'm mostly confused. Now, he said he wants to make sure that there is sunlight. I'm not really sure what exactly the American people can gain from 42,000 hours of footage. And certainly going to someone like Tucker Carlson, I'm actually less concerned about maybe a security risk by sharing this video. Tucker Carlson has made very clear that he doesn't think that what happened on January 6th was a problem. I think what's much more likely is that this footage will be used for some type of propaganda effort to downplay what happened. And so I understand that he has to repair some relationships with Tucker Carlson, who has been a critic of Kevin McCarthy. I'm just not really sure that this is a wise move. Obviously, I'm concerned about the truth how it will be portrayed here. But I also just the precedent that is being set here is very concerning, and I don't know politically why Kevin McCarthy would want to bring this topic back up. I think they had successfully moved beyond the January 6th hearings, put it in the rear view, and now it's right back in the news. And I question the political judgment of that as well.
I heard Benny Thompson say that they cleared everything with Capitol Police before they released tapes and publicly in their hearings. Danelle, talk to me about this because you had the Homeland Security account. You were involved in security for the Hill and studying it afterwards and testifying to the hearings. And what do you think about these tapes being given to a host at a network that has been dedicated to challenging whether or not January 6th, was even a threat?
Well, there's two issues here, Andrea. The first is the security issue as articulated. We don't know. Those are high-quality cameras. People can slow the speeds, look at security arrangements. Then the physical structures are still the same. The second part, I think, is a little more insidious, and that's the fact that, Tucker Carlson has peddled and disinformation and broadly conspiracy theories for many years. And so to take those tapes and craft his own narrative to radicalize more people, I think is a concern. Blaming it from Antifa to all types of things. So I think his imagination knows no bounds, and I think he's got maligned intent in terms of using those tapes. We'll have to figure out what he does with them. But certainly I advocate, and I've advocated since this happened, that they be put out there for everyone. And so other networks can show the truth behind what happened on January 6th and not just the Tucker Carlson, story that he's going to put out.
Cherry picking it.
Let
me pivot to the GAO report. There's a new GAO report saying that the Capitol Police, and the FBI identified credible threats before January 6th and didn't share them.
We've had this discussion many times. Every time that me and my team met with these entities, they said there were no credible and specific threats. And so I'm on record with that. Many other agencies are on that. And this is very elucidating for us to read that there were credible and specific threats, and they were telling us in our face there wasn't. The GAO report, I think, is very instructive and instrumental. Federal agencies use those to institute change. And so hopefully this will bring forward a lot of the issues that we didn't see in the Select Committee report in terms of recommendations.
Phil Rucker, have you ever seen anything like this where, security footage showing exactly how Nancy Pelosi, got to a secure room, where they went, all of the above, lots of, it's 44,000 hours of this is given to, one network host, especially one who is on record questioning whether this was even an insurrection?
Yeah, Andrea, it's a pretty stunning development here, and to hand over this footage, which has been kept largely secret for apparent security concerns, to a media outfit, and this is not an objective news organization. This is a partisan host on Fox News Channel on whose air has been doubting the insurrection and has a clear agenda with this footage. It's a pretty interesting turn of events here.